Marcus Chen sat in the corner booth of the dimly lit cantina, nursing his third cup of synthetic coffee. The liquid tasted like burnt metal, but it was hot and caffeinated, which was all he really needed. The artificial gravity on Station Kepler felt lighter than Earth's, making his prosthetic leg feel almost normal for once. He watched the steady stream of alien traders, diplomats, and travelers flowing through the establishment, their various languages creating a constant buzz of conversation. It had been 6 months since the Treaty of Proxima ended the war between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire. 6 months since Marcus had watched his squad sacrifice themselves to hold a crucial mining facility long enough for civilian evacuations. 6 months since a Zephyrian plasma cannon had claimed his left leg and most of his faith in anything resembling justice in the universe. Now he was here, on a neutral station, trying to figure out what a broken soldier did when the fighting stopped. The Earth military had offered him a desk job, full benefits, and a medal he didn't want. He'd turned them all down. The Zephyrians, surprisingly, had offered him something else entirely. Sergeant Chen? The voice belonged to Ambassador Thys, a tall Zephyrian with the typical elongated limbs and silver-scaled skin of his species. His translator device rendered his clicking speech into heavily accented standard. Marcus looked up from his coffee. Just Marcus now. I'm not a sergeant anymore. Thys bowed slightly. A gesture Marcus had learned indicated respect rather than submission among Zephyrians. King Zalthar wishes to honor you. He has studied your military records extensively. Great, Marcus muttered. What does he want? Another propaganda interview about human Zephyrian friendship? The ambassador's neck frills, which Marcus had learned were mood indicators, shifted to what he thought might be amusement. Nothing so formal. His Majesty wishes to present you with a gift, a personal gift, to show his respect for your unusual behavior during the war. Marcus frowned. Unusual behavior. That's what they called it when he'd repeatedly chosen to protect Zephyrian civilians during combat operations, even when it put his own people at risk. When he'd shared his squad's medical supplies with wounded enemy soldiers. When he'd refused direct orders to execute prisoners. It had nearly cost him his career, and definitely cost him friends. I don't need any gifts, Marcus said. Perhaps. But King Zalthar believes you need a companion. Thys gestured toward the cantina's entrance, one who understands the burden of service. Marcus followed the ambassador's gaze and nearly choked on his coffee. Walking through the entrance was the largest wolf-like creature he'd ever seen. It stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder, with thick silver fur that seemed to shimmer under the station's artificial lighting. Its eyes were an impossible shade of violet, and they fixed on Marcus with what looked disturbingly like intelligence. But the most shocking thing wasn't the creature's size or appearance. It was the fact that it was speaking. So you're the famous Marcus Chen, the wolf said, its voice a low rumble that somehow managed to sound amused. The words came from a small translation device attached to a collar around its neck. I've heard interesting stories about you. Marcus stared. It talks. She talks, the wolf corrected, approaching his table with a casual grace. My name is Kira. And yes, I'm quite capable of conversation. My species evolved sentience roughly the same time yours did, just on a different world. Thys cleared his throat. Kira is a Vorthak, from the Outer Rim territories. Her people have been allies of the Empire for 3 centuries. She served with distinction in our military forces. Served? Kira said, settling onto her haunches beside Marcus's table. Past tense. Like you, I found myself surplus to requirements after the treaty. Marcus looked between the wolf and the ambassador. Let me get this straight. Your king wants to give me an alien wolf as a pet? Both Kira and Thys made sounds that Marcus interpreted as laughter. A companion, Thys corrected. Not a pet. Kira is a decorated veteran, skilled in combat, survival, and what you humans call people skills. King Zalthar believes you might benefit from each other's company. I don't do companionship well, Marcus said flatly. Kira tilted her head, studying him with those violet eyes. Neither do I. Which is probably why we're both sitting in a cantina on a neutral station instead of enjoying victory parades at home. There was something in her tone that made Marcus pause. A weight he recognized. He'd heard it in his own voice often enough. What did you do? He asked. Refused to abandon a human settlement under Zephyrian bombardment, Kira said matter-of-factly. Led my pack in protecting evacuation transports instead of pressing our attack. Saved about 3,000 human civilians and got my entire unit court-martialed for insubordination. Marcus blinked. You saved humans? During the war? Civilians? Kira emphasized. Children mostly. My pack leader called it a waste of resources. I called it basic decency. She paused, her ears flicking. I hear you did similar things for my people. The silence stretched between them while alien conversations continued around them. Marcus found himself studying this creature who had apparently thrown away her career for the same reasons he had. The gift comes with no obligations, Thais said quietly. You may refuse, and King Zalthar will understand, but he believes that warriors who share similar values should not face peace alone. Marcus looked at his empty coffee cup, then at the wolf who was watching him with patient violet eyes. What would you get out of this arrangement? Kira's tail moved slightly, which Marcus guessed might be the equivalent of a shrug. Honest conversation with someone who understands. A purpose that doesn't involve killing. Someone to watch my back while I figure out what comes next. She paused. And someone who might appreciate my cooking. I've become quite good with human cuisine. You cook? Extensively. Turns out having opposable thumbs isn't strictly necessary if you're creative with your tools. Kira's ears perked up. I make excellent pasta. Despite himself, Marcus felt a small smile tugging at his lips. It had been a long time since he'd smiled about anything. The arrangement would be entirely voluntary, Thys added. You could part ways at any time. King Zalthar simply hopes that two warriors who chose compassion over orders might find some peace together. Marcus looked around the cantina again. Alien species he'd once fought alongside and against, all trying to figure out how to live in this new peacetime reality. He thought about the empty apartment waiting for him on Earth, the job offers that felt like pity, the silence that filled his days now that there were no orders to follow or soldiers to protect. Where would we go? He asked. Wherever we want, Kira said. I have a ship. Nothing fancy, but it's fast and reliable. We could explore, maybe help people who need it. Or we could find a quiet planet and learn to grow vegetables. I hear humans are good at that. I wouldn't know. I've spent the last 10 years shooting things. Same here, but I'm willing to learn if you are. Marcus studied her for a long moment. There was something calming about her presence, something that made the constant tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Maybe it was recognizing a kindred spirit, or maybe it was just the novelty of meeting someone who'd made the same impossible choices he had. You really saved 3,000 humans? Give or take a few hundred. I'm not great with exact numbers. Kira's tone was casual, but Marcus caught the hint of pride underneath. And your pack? All safe, dishonorably discharged, but alive. Most of them have found work in civilian sectors. We still keep in touch. She paused. What about your squad? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. They didn't make it. Held a mining facility so civilians could escape. Zephyrian artillery got them. I'm sorry. The simple words carried more weight than all the official condolences he'd received. Maybe because they came from someone who understood what it meant to watch good soldiers die for strangers. All right, Marcus said finally. I'll try this companion thing. But I'm not great company these days. Neither am I. We'll figure it out as we go. This bowed again. King Zalthar will be pleased. There is one more thing. He produced a small data pad from his robes. Your ship registration and ownership documents. The vessel is legally yours now, Marcus Chen. A gift from the Empire to honor your service. Marcus stared at the pad. My ship? Technically, it's both of yours, Kira said. I may be the pilot, but you're the co-owner, equal partners in whatever we decide to do. Partners, Marcus repeated, testing the word. Partners, Kira confirmed. Though I should warn you, I'm told I talk too much. Occupational hazard of spending most of my life in a pack. We're social creatures. I don't talk much at all anymore. Perfect balance, then. Marcus found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in months. Show me this ship of ours. Kira stood, stretching like a massive dog. It's called the Wandering Peace. I named it myself. The previous name was something unpronounceable in Zephyrian. Wandering Peace, Marcus mused. I like it. Good, because changing registration paperwork is a nightmare. Kira started toward the exit, then paused. Fair warning, the ship's AI has personality quirks. Previous owner was a trader who apparently enjoyed gambling and terrible music. How terrible? You know that genre humans call polka? Apparently there's a Zephyrian equivalent that involves a lot of screeching. Marcus laughed, surprising himself. I can deal with bad music. We'll see. The AI also has opinions about personal hygiene and meal schedules. As they left the cantina together, Marcus realized the knot of tension that had been living in his chest for months was starting to loosen. He wasn't sure what they were walking into, but for the first time since the war ended, he felt like he might not be walking into it alone. The docking bay was a maze of ships from dozens of worlds, their designs ranging from sleek human vessels to the organic curves of Altarian bioships. Kira led him to a mid-sized craft that looked like someone had crossed a human freighter with Zephyrian engineering. It was functional rather than beautiful, but Marcus could see the care that had been put into its maintenance. Home, sweet home, Kira said, activating the entry ramp with a gesture. It's not much, but it's got everything we need. 2 private quarters, a common area, full kitchen, and enough cargo space to make a living if we decide to try honest trade. The interior was clean and surprisingly spacious, with a mix of human and Zephyrian design elements that somehow worked together. The walls were lined with what looked like family photos, though they showed groups of wolves rather than humans. Your pack? Marcus asked, gesturing at the pictures. My family. Some by blood, some by choice. That's how it works with us. Kira's tail wagged slightly. I'll introduce you someday if you're up for it. They'd like you. How can you be sure? Because you chose to protect children who weren't your own species during a war. Among my people, that makes you family regardless of what you look like. Marcus felt something shift in his chest at those words. Family. It had been a long time since he'd been part of one. So what now? He asked. Now we figure out what 2 broken soldiers do when nobody's shooting at them anymore. Kira moved toward what looked like a communications console. I've been monitoring shipping lanes and news feeds. There are plenty of places that could use help from people with our skills. Colonies under threat from raiders, refugee situations that need security, trade disputes that require neutral mediators. Mercenary work. Helping people work. There's a difference. She brought up a star chart showing several highlighted systems. These are all situations where our particular combination of skills might make a difference, or we could head toward the outer rim and see what we find. Marcus studied the chart, feeling something he hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. Not orders from above, not military objectives, just the possibility of making things better for people who needed help. Your choice, Kira said. I'm along for the ride either way. Marcus pointed to a system in the middle of the display. What's this one? Refugee colony on Thessia Prime. Mix of human and Zephyrian settlers trying to build something new together. They've been having trouble with pirates and need people who can help with defense and organization. She paused. Might be a good place to start fresh. Sounds like our kind of problem, Marcus said. Kira's ears perked up, and her tail wagged more enthusiastically. I was hoping you'd say that. I've already prepared some basic information about the situation. As she began pulling up files on the colony, Marcus felt the last of his resistance melting away. This strange partnership might actually work. He had found someone who understood the weight of choosing compassion in an uncompassionate universe. Someone who was willing to walk into an uncertain future, rather than settle for the safe emptiness of peace. One more thing, Kira said, turning to face him with those violet eyes. I should probably mention that I snore. Quite loudly, according to my former packmates. I have nightmares and talk in my sleep. Perfect. We'll keep each other awake. Marcus settled into the co-pilot's seat as Kira began the pre-flight sequence. Through the cockpit windows, he could see stars scattered across the darkness of space, each one representing possibilities he'd never considered before. For the first time since the war ended, the future looked like something worth exploring. Ready to go find some people to help? Kira asked, her paws dancing across the controls with surprising dexterity. Ready as I'll ever be, Marcus replied. The wandering piece lifted off from Station Kepler with a gentle hum, carrying its unlikely crew toward whatever adventures awaited them among the stars. The journey to Thessia Prime took 4 days through hyperspace, during which Marcus learned several important things about his new partner. First, Kira really did snore loudly enough to rattle the ship's hull plating. Second, she made remarkably good pasta using a combination of techniques she'd learned from captured human cooking videos and her own species' natural understanding of flavor combinations. Third, she had an uncanny ability to read people that went far beyond normal intuition. Your left shoulder tenses when you're thinking about your squad, she observed on the second day as they shared breakfast in the ship's common area. And you check the exits in every room we enter, even though we're alone on the ship. Marcus paused with a forkful of surprisingly excellent carbonara halfway to his mouth. You've been watching me that closely? It's what I do. Pack dynamics require constant awareness of emotional states and stress levels. You carry your trauma in your posture. Kira's violet eyes were kind but direct. My people have ways of helping with that, if you're interested. Like what? Shared silence, mostly. Sometimes talking helps, but often just having someone present who understands makes the difference. We call it pack healing. It's why warriors who survive battles rarely live alone in Vorthak society. Marcus considered this as he ate. Human military culture often pushed soldiers toward isolation when they struggled, as if admitting need was weakness. What about you? What do you do when the memories get too loud? Run, usually at full speed through whatever terrain is available. Kira's tail swished slightly. Physical exhaustion helps quiet the mind. Though ship corridors don't provide much room for a proper sprint. The cargo bay's pretty spacious. True. Want to join me for a workout later? I'd be curious to see how humans in Vorthak compare in terms of endurance training. Marcus found himself nodding before he'd consciously decided to agree. Sure. Fair warning, though, this prosthetic leg isn't exactly built for sprinting. Then we'll find other ways to push our limits. Challenge accepted. That afternoon, Marcus discovered that Vorthak workout routines involved a lot more climbing, jumping, and use of claws than human military training. Kira, meanwhile, was fascinated by human techniques for building upper body strength and core stability. By the end of their improvised training session, both were exhausted, sweating, and laughing harder than either had in months. Your species really does have impressive grip strength, Kira panted, sprawled on the cargo bay floor. And that exercise where you support your entire body weight on your arms, That's pure madness. Push-ups are pretty basic human conditioning. Your wall climbing thing, though, that's terrifying and amazing. Marcus stretched his prosthetic leg carefully. The workout had actually helped with the phantom pain he'd been experiencing. I can see why your pack was so effective in combat. You can reach positions that other species couldn't even imagine. Comes from evolving on a world with massive cliff systems. If you couldn't climb, you starved. Kira rolled onto her side to face him. What shaped humans? Your strength and endurance capabilities seem designed for persistence rather than burst power. Persistence hunting on the savannah. Mostly, chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion rather than overpower it quickly. Marcus paused, thinking. Maybe that's why we're both good at choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. Humans evolved to never give up, and Vorthak evolved to find ways around obstacles. An interesting combination for problem-solving, Kira agreed. They reached Thessia Prime the next morning, dropping out of hyperspace to find a modest blue-green world orbited by 2 small moons. The planet had been terraformed decades ago, but still maintained a wild, frontier feel that reminded Marcus of some of Earth's remote colonies. Colony Control, this is the Wandering Piece requesting landing clearance. Kira spoke into her communications array. The response came through clearly, though the voice sounded tired. Wandering Piece, this is Colony Control. Please state your business. We're here about your security situation. I believe you've been in contact with representatives of King Zalthar regarding assistance. There was a pause, then the voice came back with considerably more energy. You're the team the king recommended? Thank goodness. Please proceed to Landing Bay 3. Governor Martinez will meet you there personally. As they descended through the atmosphere, Marcus got his first good look at the colony. The settlement sprawled across a river valley, with a mix of human rectangular buildings and the more organic curved structures favored by Zephyrians. Agricultural plots stretched out in all directions, and he could see both species working together in the fields. Looks peaceful enough, he observed. Surface appearances can be deceiving. Watch the perimeter. Kira's ears were alert, scanning the landscape below. See those scattered sensor posts? And the way the landing bays are positioned for quick defensive response? They're expecting trouble. She was right. As they touched down, Marcus noticed the subtle signs of a settlement under siege. Too many people moving with purpose rather than leisure, defensive positions built into seemingly innocent structures, and an overall tension that reminded him of forward bases during the war. Governor Martinez was waiting for them as promised, a middle-aged human woman with prematurely gray hair and the kind of steady gaze Marcus associated with experienced leaders. Standing beside her was a tall Zephyrian whose neck frills were positioned in what Marcus had learned indicated cautious optimism. Welcome to Thessia Prime, Governor Martinez said as they disembarked. I'm Elena Martinez, and this is Director Vax, my counterpart for our Zephyrian community. When King Zalthar said he was sending help, I wasn't sure what to expect. We're not exactly what most people picture when they think security consultants, Marcus admitted, gesturing toward Kira. No, but you're exactly what we need, Director Vax said, his translator rendering his speech with warm tones. Our problems require understanding rather than firepower. As they walked toward the administrative complex, Martinez explained the situation. We've been dealing with increasing raids over the past 3 months. Pirates mostly, but they're not behaving like typical pirates. They're too organized, too well informed about our defenses and shipping schedules. Inside information? Kira asked, her nose twitching as she scented the air around them. That's what we're afraid of. But the worst problem is what the raids are doing to our community. The humans want to arm everyone and shoot first. The Zephyrians want to negotiate and find a peaceful solution. We're starting to fracture along species lines. Marcus nodded, understanding immediately. Old wartime thinking taking over when people feel threatened. Exactly. And if we can't hold this community together, the whole experiment fails. Thessia Prime was supposed to prove that our species could build something new together. Instead, we're falling back into the same patterns that caused the war in the first place. They reached the administrative building, a structure that showed clear collaboration between human and Zephyrian architectural styles. Inside, maps and charts covered the walls, showing raid patterns, shipping routes, and defensive positions. "Show us everything," Kira said, settling onto her haunches in front of the largest map. "My species are natural trackers. Patterns others might miss tend to be obvious to us." For the next hour, Marcus and Kira absorbed information about the raids. The attacks had been escalating in both frequency and sophistication, targeting supply convoys and isolated farming communities with precision that suggested detailed intelligence. But it was the pattern of timing that caught Kira's attention. "These dates," she said, pointing to the raid markers with her nose. "They correspond with your supply shipment schedules, but they're also timed to maximize psychological impact. Each attack happens just when the community is starting to feel secure again." Director Vax's frills shifted to a concerned position. "You think they're deliberately trying to destabilize us psychologically?" "I think someone understands exactly how to break apart a fragile peace," Marcus said grimly. "These aren't random pirate raids. Someone wants this colony to fail." Governor Martinez sank into her chair. "But who would benefit from our failure?" "Anyone who profits from human-Zephyrian conflict," Kira observed. "Arms dealers, extremist groups on both sides, political factions who opposed the peace treaty." She paused, her ears twitching. "Or someone who wants this particular location for themselves." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. "The mineral surveys in your files. This system has significant rare earth deposits that haven't been fully exploited yet. If the colony fails and the planet gets classified as unstable, those mining rights become available to outside bidders." Marcus studied the geological reports with new eyes. "Somebody's trying to drive you off your own planet. The question is how they're getting their intelligence," Kira said. "May we examine your communication systems and speak with your security teams?" The next few hours revealed the scope of the problem. The colony's security force was split almost evenly between humans and Zephyrians, but they were operating as two separate units rather than a coordinated team. Worse, they were each developing defensive strategies based on their species' traditional military thinking, creating gaps in coverage that an intelligent enemy could exploit. "Your human teams are setting up killing fields and hardened positions," Marcus observed after reviewing their defensive plans. "Classic human doctrine for defending fixed positions. And our Zephyrian teams are focusing on mobility and rapid response," Director Vax added. "Our traditional approach to territorial defense. Both solid strategies individually," Kira said, "but they don't mesh. You've got static defenses in some areas and mobile defenses in others with no coordination between them. An attacker who understood both tactical approaches could drive a convoy between your coverage zones." "Which is exactly what they've been doing," Martinez realized, looking at the raid routes with new understanding. "There's more," Marcus said, studying personnel files. "Your communications officer, Chen Wei, has access to all shipping schedules and defensive deployments. But so does your logistics coordinator, Zix97. Either one could be providing intelligence to raiders." "You suspect one of our own people?" Director Vax's frills flattened against his neck. "Or someone's been compromised without knowing it. Are your communication systems secured against external monitoring?" The answer, as Marcus suspected, was not adequately. The colony's communications network had been designed for efficiency and ease of use rather than security. A sophisticated intelligence operation could potentially monitor most of their traffic without detection. "We need to set a trap," Kira said after they'd completed their initial assessment. "But first, we need to get your security teams working together properly." "How do you suggest we do that?" Martinez asked. Marcus and Kira exchanged glances. Joint training exercises, they said simultaneously. Your people need to learn each other's strengths and how to coordinate their different approaches, Marcus explained. Humans bring persistence and defensive expertise. Zephyrians bring mobility and adaptability. Combined properly, they should be nearly unstoppable. The problem is trust, Kira added. They're still thinking of each other as former enemies rather than current teammates. We need to break down those barriers. And you know how to do that? Director Vax asked. We're living proof it's possible, Marcus said simply. The next morning found Marcus and Kira standing before a mixed group of 40 security personnel in the colony's training facility. The humans and Zephyrians had naturally segregated themselves into two groups, each eyeing the other with polite but distant professionalism. I know what you're all thinking, Marcus began. Why should you listen to a broken human soldier and an alien wolf about working together? Because 6 months ago, we were shooting at each other, Kira continued seamlessly. And now we're partners. Not because some treaty said we had to be, but because we learned to see past species differences to shared values. Marcus gestured toward the mixed group. Every person in this room chose to be here, chose to be part of something bigger than old hatreds. That tells me you all have more in common than you might think. Today's exercise is simple, Kira announced. Mixed teams. Each team gets one human and one Zephyrian. You're going to run a series of tactical scenarios that require both human and Zephyrian skills to complete successfully. The catch, Marcus added with a slight smile, is that you can't complete any scenario using only your own species' traditional tactics. You have to find ways to combine your approaches. The first few hours were awkward, with teams struggling to communicate across species barriers and tactical doctrines. But gradually, something started to change. The human persistence and methodical planning began to mesh with Zephyrian mobility and adaptability. Teams started developing hybrid tactics that were more effective than either approach alone. Watch this, Kira murmured to Marcus as they observed one team working through a hostage rescue scenario. A human sergeant was directing covering fire while her Zephyrian partner used superior climbing ability to reach an elevated position for observation and sniper support. They're learning, Marcus agreed. Look at Team 6. Team 6 had figured out that human defensive expertise could create safe zones that allowed Zephyrian rapid response teams to operate more aggressively, knowing they had secure fallback positions available. By the end of the day, the 40 security personnel were functioning as an integrated unit, rather than two separate forces. More importantly, they were starting to see each other as individuals, rather than representatives of their species. Tomorrow we test this in the field, Marcus announced, as the training session ended. We're going to set a trap for whoever's been raiding your supply convoys. How? Asked Sergeant Torres, one of the human security team leaders. Kira's teeth showed in what might have been a smile. We're going to give them exactly what they expect to see, then surprise them with what they don't. That evening, as Marcus and Kira planned the next day's operation in the colony's security office, Governor Martinez found them reviewing tactical maps and communications protocols. I wanted to thank you, she said. I watched the training today. For the first time since the raid started, I saw hope in my people's faces. They just needed to remember what they were fighting for, Marcus replied. And that they're stronger together than apart. It's what makes humans special, Kira added thoughtfully. Your species has this remarkable ability to adapt and integrate with others while maintaining your core values. My people respect that. Your people aren't exactly lacking in admirable qualities, Marcus pointed out. That tactical flexibility and natural cooperation instinct of yours is pretty impressive. A good partnership, Martinez observed with a smile. Yes, Kira agreed, her tail wagging slightly. I think it is. As they finished their planning for the next day's operation, Marcus realized that he'd stopped thinking about Kira as an alien or former enemy. She was simply his partner, someone who watched his back and shared his values. The fact that she happened to be a sentient wolf from another world seemed almost incidental now. Tomorrow, they would find out if their trap worked, and whether the colony's new integrated security force could protect their home. But tonight, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months: confidence in the people around him. "Ready to catch some pirates?" he asked. "Ready," Kira replied, her violet eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Time to show them what happens when they threaten our people." "Our people," Marcus noted. "Not humans, not Zephyrians, not even colonists. Just people worth protecting." Maybe that was what peace really meant, expanding the definition of us to include anyone willing to build something better together. Outside the administrative building, two moons cast silver light over fields where human and Zephyrian families were working toward a shared future. Tomorrow would bring danger, but tonight there was hope. The false supply convoy departed Thessia Prime at dawn, following the same route and schedule that had been transmitted through the colony's supposedly secure communication network. Marcus rode in the lead transport with Sergeant Torres and two Zephyrian security officers, while Kira took point position with the advanced scouting team, her natural tracking abilities and speed making her perfect for early warning. The convoy consisted of 3 cargo haulers and 2 escort vehicles, exactly the configuration that previous successful raids had targeted. To any observer, it looked like standard defensive procedures, the same procedures that had failed repeatedly over the past 3 months. What the raiders wouldn't see were the integrated human Zephyrian teams positioned along the route, using combined tactics they'd developed during yesterday's training. Human persistence and defensive coordination merged with Zephyrian mobility and environmental awareness. Instead of predictable static defenses or purely mobile responses, they'd created something entirely new. "Kira, report," Marcus spoke into his communicator as the convoy reached the first checkpoint. "All clear ahead, but I'm picking up traces of recent vehicle passage about 2 clicks north of the main route." Her voice came through clearly with that hint of excitement that suggested she was enjoying herself. "Fresh exhaust signatures and disturbed vegetation. Someone's been using the parallel mining road for observation." "Copy that." "Torres, adjust our defensive screen to cover the north approach." The mixed security teams moved with precision that would have been impossible a week earlier. Human teams established overlapping fields of fire, while Zephyrian scouts used their superior mobility to create a flexible perimeter that could respond to threats from any direction. The attack came at the narrow pass through Devil's Canyon, exactly where intelligence suggested it would. But instead of finding an exposed convoy with predictable defenses, the raiders encountered something they weren't prepared for. The first indication of trouble came when Kira's voice crackled through the communications net. "Contact. 8 vehicles approaching from the North Ridge. They're moving to cut off retreat through the pass." "Confirmed visual," came another voice. "Additional vehicles moving in from the south. Classic pincer movement." Marcus felt the familiar surge of combat adrenaline, but this time it was tempered by confidence in the people around him. "All teams, execute Plan Delta. Remember, we want prisoners for questioning." What followed was a masterclass in integrated tactics. The human teams created killing zones that channeled the attackers into areas where Zephyrian rapid response teams could use their mobility to maximum advantage. When raiders tried to use their superior numbers to overwhelm fixed positions, they found those positions supported by mobile Zephyrian units that could appear and disappear like ghosts. The raiders' initial confidence quickly turned to confusion, then desperation. They'd been expecting the same passive defensive response they'd encountered before. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to predict their every move and counter with tactics they'd never seen. "They're trying to break contact," Kira reported from her position overlooking the battle. 5 vehicles heading back toward the North Ridge. Cut them off, Marcus ordered. Teams 7 and 9, intercept. Everyone else, tighten the net on the remaining raiders. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. When the dust settled, 12 raiders were in custody, their vehicles captured or disabled, and not a single colonist had been seriously injured. More importantly, the integrated security force had performed flawlessly, proving that human and Zephyrian tactical doctrines could be combined into something superior to either alone. But the real revelation came during interrogation. "They're not pirates," Marcus announced grimly as he and Kira reviewed the preliminary questioning results. "They're mercenaries, professional military contractors." Director Vax's frills flattened against his neck. "Mercenaries? Who hired them?" "That's where it gets interesting," Kira said, her violet eyes reflecting anger. "They were contracted through a shell company, but the money trail leads back to hegemony industrial concerns." Governor Martinez looked up from her datapad. "I've never heard of them." "Mining Consortium," Marcus explained. "They submitted a bid for mineral rights in this system 6 months ago. When the government awarded those rights to the colony instead, they weren't happy about it. So they decided to drive us out," Martinez said flatly. "Worse than that, the lead mercenary was quite talkative once we explained that cooperation would be viewed favorably during his trial." Kira's tail swished with agitation. "They weren't just trying to destabilize the colony. They were specifically targeting mixed-species cooperation." "What do you mean?" Director Vax asked. "Every raid was designed to increase tension between humans and Zephyrians," Marcus said. "Attack timing that maximized stress, intelligence leaks that suggested inside betrayal, tactics that played on each species' natural defensive instincts. Someone studied your community very carefully and crafted attacks designed to tear it apart from within." "The ultimate goal wasn't just mineral rights," Kira continued. "It was proving that human-Zephyrian cooperation was doomed to fail. If Thessia Prime collapsed due to internal conflicts, it would provide ammunition for political factions on both worlds who oppose the peace treaty." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This hadn't been simple greed or criminal opportunism. It had been a calculated attack on the very possibility of peaceful coexistence between their species. "But it failed," Martinez said finally. "Spectacularly," Marcus confirmed. "Your security forces didn't just defend the colony. They proved that humans and Zephyrians are stronger together than apart. The battle recordings will provide excellent evidence for war crimes prosecutors and even better evidence for anyone who claims our species can't work together." "There's more," Kira added, with what Marcus had learned to recognize as satisfaction. "We traced the intelligence leaks. They weren't coming from inside the colony at all. The mercenaries had infiltrated your communication network with sophisticated monitoring equipment. No one betrayed you. Your trust in each other was justified all along." Director Vax made a sound that the translator rendered as relieved laughter. "So we were right to believe in each other." "You were right about everything that mattered," Marcus said. "The strength you found in cooperation, the values you chose to build on, the belief that different species could create something better together. Today proved all of that." As word of the victory spread through the colony, Marcus and Kira found themselves in an unusual position. The grateful colonists wanted to celebrate their heroes, but both veterans were more comfortable in the background than the spotlight. They were sitting on a hillside overlooking the colony as sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, watching humans and Zephyrians working together to repair minor damage from the battle. Children of both species played together in the streets below, their laughter carried on the evening breeze. "You know what I find most remarkable about humans?" Kira said thoughtfully. "What's that?" "You have this gift for making others want to be their best selves, not through force or manipulation, but through example." Those security teams didn't learn to work together because someone ordered them to. They learned because they saw you treating me as an equal partner and realized they could do the same. Marcus considered this. I think you're giving us too much credit. Zephyrians chose to change too. Your people could have held on to old hatreds. But instead you chose cooperation. That's not human influence. That's Zephyrian character. Perhaps. But humans have a way of bringing out that character in others. You see potential where others see obstacles. Kira's ears twitched in amusement. Even when the potential comes in the form of a chatty alien wolf. Even then, Marcus agreed with a smile. Though I have to admit, when Ambassador Thys first introduced us, I never imagined it would work out like this. What did you imagine? Honestly? I thought it was charity, a sympathy gift for a broken soldier who didn't know how to function in peacetime. Marcus stretched his prosthetic leg carefully. I was too proud to accept charity, but too lost to refuse help. And now? Now I know it wasn't charity at all. King Zalthar understood something I didn't, that healing happens through partnership, not isolation. He gave us both exactly what we needed, someone who understood the cost of choosing right over easy. Kira was quiet for a moment, watching the colony below. We've both changed since that cantina on Station Kepler. For the better, I hope. Definitely for the better. I was angry when we first met. Angry at my pack leader who called protecting civilians a waste of resources. Angry at a war that forced impossible choices. Angry at a peace that left me with no purpose. Her tail swept slowly across the grass. I'm not angry anymore. What are you now? Hopeful. Purposeful. Part of something important again. She looked at him with those violet eyes. What about you? Still the broken soldier who didn't know how to function in peacetime? Marcus thought about it seriously. The nightmares were still there, and probably always would be. His prosthetic leg still ached, and he still missed his squad every day. But something fundamental had changed. No, he said finally. I'm not broken anymore. Scarred, maybe. Changed by what I've experienced, but not broken. He paused, finding the right words. I think I understand now what you meant about pack healing. Having someone who understands, that makes all the difference. Even when that someone is a chatty alien wolf? Especially when they're a chatty alien wolf who makes excellent pasta and snores loud enough to wake the dead. Kira's laughter was one of the most beautiful sounds Marcus had ever heard. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead, each lost in their own thoughts about the day's events and what lay ahead. Tomorrow they would file their reports, collect their fee from the grateful colonists, and decide where to go next. There were other places that needed their particular combination of skills, other communities that could benefit from their hard-won understanding of cooperation. So what's our next move? Marcus asked eventually. There's a mining station in the Vega system that's been having labor disputes between human and Centaurian workers, Kira said. Could use mediators who understand cross-species dynamics. Sounds like our kind of challenge. Or there's a frontier world where human farmers and native sentients are fighting over water rights. Complex situation that needs creative solutions. Also appealing. Marcus stood and offered Kira a hand up, which she accepted with amusement, despite not really needing the assistance. Lots of ways we can make a difference out here. As long as we're making that difference together, Kira said. I've gotten used to having a partner who watches my back. Likewise, though I still think King Zalthar knew exactly what he was doing when he introduced us. Of course he did. Zephyrian royalty doesn't survive by making random decisions. Kira grinned, showing impressive teeth. He saw two veterans who had sacrificed everything for their principles and were struggling to find their place in peace. Put them together, and they'd either destroy each other or create something remarkable. And we created something remarkable. We did indeed. As they walked back toward the colony, Marcus reflected on the strange turns his life had taken. 6 months ago, he'd been a bitter, isolated veteran nursing drinks in a space station cantina, convinced that his best days were behind him. Now he was part of a partnership that had just saved an entire community and proved that former enemies could become not just allies, but family. Kira? Yes? Thank you. For taking a chance on a broken human soldier. Thank you for taking a chance on a chatty alien wolf. She bumped his shoulder affectionately with hers. We make a good team. The best. The Wandering Piece sat in Landing Bay 3, waiting to carry them to their next adventure. Marcus had no doubt there would be challenges ahead, places where human and alien cultures clashed, problems that needed their unique perspective and combined skills. But he was no longer facing those challenges alone. He had a partner who understood him, a purpose that mattered, and a future full of possibilities. For a veteran who'd once thought his war was over and his usefulness ended, that was everything he could have asked for. Ready to go save the galaxy one community at a time? Kira asked as they reached their ship. With you as my partner? Always ready. The boarding ramp lowered to welcome them home, and Marcus Chen realized that home wasn't a place anymore. Home was wherever he and Kira chose to stand together against the darkness, fighting for people who needed their help and proving every day that cooperation was stronger than conflict. As the Wandering Piece lifted off from Thessia Prime, carrying its crew toward whatever challenges awaited among the stars, the colony below continued its peaceful work. Human and Zephyrian families worked side by side, children played together in the streets, and the security forces maintained their vigilant but confident watch over it all. The experiment was working. Peace was possible. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, a human veteran and his alien wolf partner were heading toward their next opportunity to prove that different species could build something better together than either could create alone. King Zalthar had chosen his gift well. 2 broken warriors had found healing in partnership, purpose in service, and hope in each other. They had become living proof that the bonds forged in understanding and mutual respect were stronger than any that could be broken by war. The stars ahead were full of promise, and they would face whatever came next the way they had learned to face everything, together.